Now we will continue with the talk of Victoria Asensi Amorós. Victoria has a PhD in ancient history and archaeology of the University of Alicante in Spain. She is an expert wood micrographer, and as a specialist in wood anatomy and in the history and distribution of plant species in ancient Egypt, she has created and has been managing the company Xylodata since 2005. So I'm very pleased to welcome Victoria and that she will speak to us about a fantastic group of objects. The title of her conference is, I think it's okay for me. We will start today with this session dedicated to adapting wood anatomy techniques, the case of Kha and Merit collection in the Turin Museum. Thank you, Victoria.
Good morning or evening to all of you. I'm going to talk to you about an outstanding museum collection and how we studied. In 2019, the Museum of Turin honored me by asking me to do the analysis of the wood species of the Kha and Merit objects. And facing the magnitude of the collection and its various constraints, I decided to apply different techniques in order to optimize the work and to be able to take the smallest amount of material possible. But before we expose the technique employed and our first results, we quickly place our collection in space and time. We must go back to 1906 in the village of Deir el-Medina in front of the current city of Luxor. On February 15, the Italian archaeological mission, led by the director of Museo Egizio, Ernesto Schiaparelli, discovered the shaft of a tomb which had been sealed by a landslide. The shaft led down to one of the great archaeological discovery in Egypt, the intact burial of two upper-class individuals, the director of works, Kha, and his wife Merit, who lived during the XVIII dynasty. So around 1400 BC, during the reigns of Amenhotep II, Thutmose IV, and Amenhotep III. The Italian archaeological mission used 250 workers to dig in pursuit of the tomb for several weeks. Schiaparelli was granted permission to bring the 440 objects found in the tomb to Turin, leaving only a few objects in Cairo, and since then, the grave goods of Kha and Merit are exhibited at the Museo Egizio. Since the publication in 1927 of the Catalogue of the Tomb Collection, the techniques of a study, just like our knowledge, progress well. Thus, the museum charged us with analysis and scientific study of wooden objects, a part of a multidisciplinary research program titled TT8 Project, aimed to publish the first full study of the grave goods of Kha for the bicentennial of the Museo Egizio in 2024. It is a unique opportunity to observe a well-dated and localized collection, and we use different techniques to make or observe our samples. From the in-situ observation with a dynolite, a small USB microscope plugged on the laptop, and the microsamples making, to the observation with different microscopes and even a synchrotron, we present here our first results. The different techniques we use were imposed on us by several factors, including the size and the nature of the objects, the mode of exhibition, and the permitted size of the samples. In the collection, we found about 105 wooden objects of diverse size and functionalities. We have quite big objects like the entrance door of the tomb and the other and inner coffin of Kha and Merit. Also of great size, we have the two beds, a lamp support, or the wick box of Lady Merit. As far as the size of the object is concerned, it is closely linked to its mode of display. We therefore had to adapt to the museum exhibition conditions, the type of display cases, the fact that the museum is open to the public almost of the time, and the availability of the staff of the superintendenza who had to be with us and sometimes sample for us. You can see at the bottom, Dr. Matilda Borla from the superintendenza taking samples for Merit beds. It was very difficult to gain access to the door of the tomb, top right, as a very heavy plexiglass display cube covers it completely and was complicated to hold up. For coffins or bed, the problem was the opening of only one part of the display case, with the impossibility of moving around inside, and therefore not having access to all the elements of the object. In the case of Kha&Merit coffin, on top left, we only had access to the left side of the coffin. The numbers you can see correspond to our samples. Fortunately, we have other smaller items. We found a nice collection of chests and boxes, big and small, very decorated or quite simple, with very different opening systems. They have a minimum of 2 different types of wood, and some are quite difficult to sampling. The tomb has also provided us a fine collection of chairs and especially stools with 3 or 4 legs, fixed or folding, with imitations or with wooden inlays. Particularly touching, I think, is the footrest of Kha below on the left. Among the household furniture, we also have some tables. They can be very simple in wood and rush, top on the right, or with a very modern design, as we can see at bottom right. Toilet objects are also well represented with coal containers and applicators or combs. This category of objects, because of their small size, can be very difficult to sample in order to preserve its integrity. The tomb has also provided us with working tools, including this magnificent cubit in the center and 2 beautiful scribe palettes. Particularly difficult to study are the 9 sticks of the collection. Some are highly decorated and some others are hidden by linen strips. The honor statuette, Shakti and small-scale working tools, the headrest, and the Senate game complete the overview of the collection. For all these categories of objects, from boxes to headrest, it was a pleasure to work in the collections room, spacious and perfectly equipped for our needs. Here, we had the time to observe our objects and prepare them for the best sampling. And this is the ideal image of what we want to obtain with our samples. To identify a species, we must observe and measure the different anatomical elements of the wood in these 3 sections: transverse, tangential, and radial. This means that we must take 3 different samples from an object or from each wood if it's made up of different species. Generally, very thin razor cuts that we will empty of their cell content, recolor, and observe under the microscope are sufficient to make a good identification up to obtain the 3 views. In the particular case of this collection, and for the reasons already mentioned, I was not sure to get enough material to the 3 necessary sections. As we are stronger with others, I call on an excellent wood anatomist with whom I had already worked during one of my research programs in Japan. Professor Ito joined me in Turin for a week, and we were able to work together. Before any sampling, we observe our objects with a magnifying glass and a USB microscope. This first observation is very important for the location of our sections to be sampling. It will give us an idea of the orientation and distribution of the different elements of the wood. The USB microscope works quite well when the wood is polished and the object well oriented. This configuration can happen, but it's not very common. Most of the time, we can observe 1 or 2 sections with satisfactory results, as we will see later. I took tomb samples to Paris to prepare as I have just shown you. We sent to Japan those 2 small or fragile chips that cannot be cut by hand and need to be embedded in epoxy resin, forming a small cube. This cube, once solidified, measures about half a cubic centimeter and can be introduced into a rotary microtome, which will provide very fine and oriented slides. after analyzed under a microscope, as you can see on the bottom out right. Even smaller, we had the opportunity to send some samples to Spring 8. It is a large synchrotron radiation facility that uses narrow, powerful electron beams of electromagnetic radiation to reconstitute a three-dimensional image of the wood anatomical microstructure. Unfortunately, COVID-19 delayed our program, and since 2019, we have not been able to return to Turin to finish our work. We are also still waiting for the results of the synchrotron, as the site has also been closed. We still have 21 objects to study and 17 that will be completed, like the coffins, if they can be opened. So far, among the native species that we have been able to observe, we have acacias and fig trees, very common in the Egyptian landscape. We also found different species of tamarics, persea, or jujube. Here you have some illustration of the shape of the tree, leaves, and fruits. Among the foreign species, we note the presence of boxwood and two conifers, cedar and yew. The wood of the latter is not commonly found in the objects of ancient Egypt. Among the black and hard foreign woods called ebony, we have objects produced by two different botanical families. You have here two species that are anatomically distinct, but quite similar to the naked eye and easily confused. I have chosen to present here only two with an identical distribution, but there are many others. I will show you some results of our work in progress. From now on, I have noted in green the foreign species to distinguish them from the local ones in orange. The cedar is the only foreign element in this category, but we didn't have access to all the part of the objects. For example, the upper part of the door and its lock could not be analyzed at this time. The Senate game shows a very nice mix of species, a wall assembly that had to play with the color effects of different types of wood, as well as their ability to handle and make the object solid and durable. The chests have a minimum of two different species, very often three. Acacia, fig, tamarics, jujube, and cedar form the different elements, boards, legs, pegs, and bottoms. Two of the smaller chests are very interesting. Both are made of precious wood, including the local persea, a wood which has fairly fine grain. In the category of chairs and stools, only the very decorated chair of Kha, which imitated well the precious wood, is made in a single species. The pegs are not accessible, but everything indicates that only the fig tree was used. The stools are made of 2 or 3 species of wood, very often with a mixture of native and foreign species. As you can see, I could go on like this for a long time, so I choose to finish today with this folding stool. It is an interesting piece. On the one hand, you can see the application of 3 of our techniques for identification. The resin inclusions in Japan identified the tamarisk seed. In Paris, I was able to identify the boxwood legs, and the USB microscope had allowed us to highlight the use of African ebony in Turin. This smallest tool also offers us the possibility of comparing it to one of its little brothers that we were able to analyze in the framework of the catalog of household furniture of the Louvre Museum. It is an opportunity to compare the species used, the same in both cases, the construction methods, and perhaps in the future to define workshops and artists. Professor Ito and I would like to warmly thank all those who made our visit and our work in Turin particularly enjoyable. We think very hard to all of the team of the collection management and wish to see you soon. Thank you all for your attention.
Thank you very much, Victoria. Yeah, it's one of the best collection in wood, and we are so lucky that you can analyze them with this fantastic team, and we really wait for the publication of all these results to have a lot of information about this.
24.
24, okay. Yeah, sure, it takes time. So yeah. Thank you very much. It was very great. I'm sure you have keep all your questions for the time of discussion.